The city breathed in silence before dawn. Manhattan's towering glass and steel giants loomed like sleeping titans under a sky washed in muted indigo. The streets were empty, save for the soft amber flicker of street lamps casting broken halos across rain-slicked pavement. A cold breeze whispered between buildings, carrying with it the distant hum of an awakening world. Boots, worn but steady, echoed softly against the concrete. Dwayne Johnson walked alone, head slightly bowed, hands deep in the pockets of a black wool coat. There was no entourage, no flashing bulbs, no crowd calling his name. Just a man and his thoughts, carried by the rhythm of his steps. The city had always humbled him. Beneath these same towers, he had once walked with no fame, no money, no direction. The memory flickered, sharp and familiar. A younger Dwayne with his hood pulled tight against the cold stomach hollow, heart heavier than his duffel bag of gym clothes. He smiled faintly now, the weight no longer physical but still deeply rooted. As the neon glow of a diner sign buzzed weakly in the distance, Dwayne paused at a crosswalk. The chill kissed his skin through the collar of his coat. Across the empty street, his reflection stared back from the dark window of a bank. Broader now, older, more certain, yet still carrying the quiet burden of who he had been. Fame is the loudest silence, he thought. It shouts your name but never knows your heart. His phone vibrated in his pocket. The name on the screen blinked with casual finality. Marcus Grayson Show. Confirmed. He stared at it for a long beat, letting the weight of those words settle. Everyone in the business knew Marcus Grayson. The host wore tailored sarcasm like armor, slashing egos with a smile. Celebrities lined up for a seat on his stage, only to leave with their pride wounded, their words twisted into viral sound bites. Dwayne exhaled slowly. He had been invited, unexpected, unavoidable, and somehow inevitable. The soft tap of boots resumed as he crossed the street. A distant delivery truck rumbled somewhere far behind him. The cold air felt thinner as he walked. Why now? He wondered. Why me? Not out of fear. Dwayne wasn't afraid of cameras or confrontation. He had fought bigger battles in iron cages and darker rooms. But there was an unease, a knowing that this encounter was different. It wasn't about muscles or stunts or blockbuster premieres. This would be about character. And character, he knew, was often tested when no script had been written for use. He passed a sleeping vendor cart. A stray newspaper fluttered against the curb. Its headline shouted about scandal and betrayal, the kind of noise the world feasted on. Dwayne stopped briefly, gazing at the harsh black letters before stepping over them without a glance back. Ahead, the first warm light of the morning slipped, shyly between two skyscrapers, painting soft gold edges on the steel monsters above. Dwayne paused again and closed his eyes. They'll expect a spectacle, he thought. I'll give them something rarer. Grace. With that, he pressed on into the thinning darkness, toward the bright lights that awaited. The city, unaware of the quiet storm about to enter its studios, exhaled once more and fell silent. The afternoon sunlight slanted across the polished glass walls of Dwayne Johnson's private office, catching on the muted gold nameplate that read D. Johnson in clean, unfussy lettering. The space was minimal yet warm. Family photos, a few championship belts placed almost shyly in a corner, and a single framed quote from his father, "Be bigger than your circumstances." Dwayne sat at the wide oak desk, elbows resting lightly, phone pressed to his ear. His jaw tightened ever so slightly as he listened. On the line, his longtime agent, Reggie Martin, spoke with a rare seriousness. "D, I know you're busy, but I had to call you directly. Marcus Grayson's show wants you next week." A pause. The name hung in the air like a sharp blade. Dwayne leaned back, eyes flicking toward the window where the Los Angeles skyline burned softly under the afternoon sun. "Marcus?" he repeated, the name tasting sour and metallic. "Yeah." Reggie sighed. "The Marcus Grayson, king of sarcasm, master of the gotcha moment. You know how he works. Celebs go on for PR. Leave humiliated." The soft tick of the office clock filled the silence. Dwayne's fingers traced the grain of the wood absent-mindedly. He had watched from afar for years as Grayson dissected reputations under hot studio lights. Stars bigger than him had left shaken, their carefully built images splintered. "Why me?" Dwayne asked quietly. Reggie hesitated. "You've got the #1 film, the charity work. You're everywhere, the public loves you, which makes you his perfect target." Another pause. Dwayne's gaze fell to an old photo on the desk, him and his late mother, smiling, outside a tiny Florida apartment, long before fame touched his life. In the photo, her hand rested gently but firmly on his shoulder, as if anchoring him to something deeper. Her voice returned like a soft wind across time. "You can't control what they say, baby, but you can control how you stand when they say it." The memory warmed him, calmed him. "Reggie," Dwayne murmured, "I've stood in rings with people twice my size. I've been broke, I've been laughed at. What's one more test?" Reggie exhaled on the other end. "I figured you'd say that. Just be ready. It's not a fair fight." Dwayne smiled faintly, eyes softening. "None of them ever are." He tapped the desk gently, as if sealing an unspoken promise. "I'll do it." The words felt strangely peaceful leaving his mouth. Not defiant, not proud, just steady. At that moment, a shadow crossed the window as a bird sailed silently past the glass. Dwayne followed its arc with his eyes. Freedom, grace under pressure, that was the real test. The call ended, and the office fell into a gentle golden hush. The sun slipped lower in the sky, casting long streaks of amber across the framed photos and simple objects that told the real story of the man behind the icon. Dwayne rose from his chair, stretching his massive frame slowly. He walked over to the window and stood there for a long while, watching the world move far below. A soft breeze teased the corner of a curtain. "They'll come for the legend," he thought, his reflection merging with the world outside. "But I'll show them the man." With that, Dwayne turned, the decision made. Calm, unshaken, ready to step into the lion's den, carrying not armor, but dignity. The city still wore the dampness of dawn, though the Hollywood sun had begun slicing streaks of gold through the low-hanging mist. Dwayne Johnson's black SUV rolled slowly down the narrow studio lane, tires crackling over the scattered gravel like a warning. The lot gates creaked open with indifference, revealing an army of metal rigs, towering cranes, and cluttered cables sprawled like veins through the concrete arteries of this make-believe world. The vehicle eased to a stop. For a heartbeat, there was only silence. Then the door clicked open, and he stepped out. The cool morning breeze tugged at Dwayne's gray hoodie, its soft cotton worn and comforting. He stood tall, still, surveying the sprawling chaos before him. His breath lingered visibly in the chilled air. Flashes erupted almost instantly. The first paparazzi, crouched behind an old prop dumpster, caught the image they'd waited hours to steal. Click, click, click. Each shutter a punctuation mark of expectation, of judgment. "The Rock's here," someone whispered. He heard it, he always heard it. As Dwayne walked toward stage 12, the ground seemed to pulse under his boots, a steady rhythm matching the pounding in his chest. His massive silhouette stretched long across the asphalt as crew members scurried around him like ghosts avoiding contact. Some glanced up, offered brief nods, then quickly looked away as if eye contact might ignite confrontation. He smiled faintly. Not warmth, not coldness, simply understanding. They all had their stories. So did he. A young assistant, no more than 20 and clearly terrified, fumbled her headset as she approached. Mr. Johnson, they're, waiting for you." "Inside," she stammered. "Dwayne," he corrected softly, the deep timbre of his voice steady and kind. "Just Dwayne." The assistant flushed bright red, her clipboard shaking as she led him forward. They passed an older producer standing arrogantly near the soundstage, a man with sharp eyes and an expensive scarf tossed carelessly around his neck. "Finally," the producer sneered under his breath, not caring if Dwayne heard. "The muscle shows up." Dwayne paused. A quiet weight fell over the space. His eyes, calm yet piercing, flicked to the man. I was never just the muscle, Dwayne thought to himself. He said nothing. Silence, he had learned, was sometimes the loudest statement. The steel doors of Stage 12 loomed ahead like the gates of an ancient arena. As they swung open, a flood of artificial light poured out, blinding and sterile. Inside, scattered crew. Members froze. Conversations dropped, cameras clicked back into place. The air turned colder, heavier. A pair of young makeup artists standing by the wall whispered too loudly, "Doesn't look as big in real life." Yeah. Wonder if he's even staying for long. Dwayne caught it. The words stung briefly, but faded just as fast into the long list of unseen cuts he'd endured for years. His father's warnings echoed in his mind. They'll doubt you. Let them. Just keep walking forward. And so he did. A grip handed him a marked-up script without even meeting his eyes. The pages were already creased, as if they'd been casually tossed around. The scene was meant to humiliate his character. Dwayne read it in silence. A slow exhale left his chest. "Let's go," he murmured. The assistant blinked. You're ready?" He nodded. "I've been ready my whole life." As the door shut behind him with a hollow metallic bang, the studio swallowed him whole. Dwayne stood there under the oppressive beams of the overhead lights, shoulders squared, gaze steady. The faint scent of sweat, dust, and stale coffee clung to the fabric of the studio walls. They underestimated him. They always had. But what they couldn't see, the resilience beneath the skin, the relentless spirit forged in failure, the storms he had walked through to stand here today, that was his real strength. Dwayne flexed his fingers slowly, as if preparing to grip not just the scene, but the narrative itself. The judgmental stares could keep coming. The fake smiles could stay plastered. The whispers could multiply. He was here. He would own this space, not because of arrogance, but because of purpose. Because when everything else fades, the truth remains. He was never just The Rock. He was Dwayne Johnson. And he had arrived. The studio lights burned like miniature suns. Their searing white glow erased shadows, flattened features, and left the room feeling more like an interrogation chamber than a talk show set. The sleek black floor gleamed under the overhead rigging, polished to a cruel perfection. Cameras loomed from multiple angles, silent predators waiting to pounce. Dwayne Johnson sat tall in the leather guest chair, his broad frame dwarfing the delicate glass table between him and his host. His hands rested calmly on his thighs, fingers gently interlaced. The veins on his forearms rose subtly beneath the skin, a silent testament to the tension hidden beneath his surface calm. Marcus Grayson slid smoothly into his seat across from him. The host's custom-tailored navy suit clung to his wiry frame. His smile was dazzling under the lights, polished. To disarm, sharpened to wound, Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, the myth, the mountain, the multi-million-dollar machine. "Welcome," Marcus said, his voice the perfect blend of warmth and condescension. Dwayne returned the smile with effortless restraint. "Thank you, Marcus. It's good to be here." The crowd clapped mechanically from offstage. The sound was hollow, rehearsed. Marcus leaned back, eyes narrowing. "You've been called a lot of things, Dwayne. Hero, icon, corporate product, walking billboard. What does it feel like to be packaged?" The insult was laced in velvet. Dwayne's jaw tensed imperceptibly. He inhaled slowly through his nose, exhaled just as soft. "I see it differently," Dwayne answered smoothly. "I think of it as being consistent. When people see me, they know what I stand for: work, discipline, and respect." Marcus's smirk widened. "Of course. And yet, many say it's all manufactured. The workouts, the smiles, the family man image, the brand-friendly toughness. Is there even a real person behind The Rock?" The words lingered, acidic. Dwayne sat motionless. Inside, the familiar battle played out. Years of wrestling arenas, Hollywood contracts, boardrooms, betrayals, and backroom deals had trained him for this exact moment. The urge to snap back, to push the chair back and walk off burned hot. but he let it pass like a wave, crashing and receding. "You know," Dwayne replied, voice even, "people have the right to question. I've learned that. But the people who've known me since day one, they know I've always been Dwayne first. The rest, the cameras, the posters, the movies, that's just the job." A flicker of frustration crossed Marcus's face. He shifted tactics. "Let's talk about the failures," Marcus continued, tone tightening. "Football, gone. Wrestling, well, that's not exactly the Oscars. Acting, you bombed in your first leading role, and yet here you sit, acting like a king. How do you spin so many losses into some fairy tale about hard work?" The shot was direct, intended to draw blood. Dwayne felt the words like blunt force. Images flashed through his mind. The moment the Calgary Stampeders cut him, the nights he slept on a mattress with no headboard, the phone that didn't ring, the endless cycle of proving, failing, rebuilding. In the silence, he let the pain exist. Not as weakness, but as truth. "I don't spin them," Dwayne said slowly. His deep voice dropped to almost a whisper, charged with gravity. "I carry them. Every loss, every rejection, every closed door. Those are the bricks I used to build. The man sitting here, I never wanted perfect. I wanted progress." For the first time, Marcus faltered. The studio fell deathly still. Dwayne shifted slightly in his chair, gaze unwavering. "I've been broke. I've been laughed at. I've been told no more times than you can count. So when you ask me who I am, I'm the guy who never stayed down." A long pause. Marcus cleared his throat, glancing briefly at his cue cards. The plan had been to rattle Dwayne, to expose cracks. Instead, Marcus found himself staring at a mountain that would not move. "Well then," Marcus chuckled stiffly, regaining composure. "They also say you're too polished, too perfect. No real edge, no danger. Critics call you safe." Dwayne leaned forward ever so slightly, his massive frame commanding the space. "Safe?" he repeated, a hint of steel entering his voice. "You don't come from where I come from and play it safe. You don't grow up watching your parents struggle and survive by playing it safe. I've fought for every inch of this life. That's not safe. That's survival." Marcus froze. Dwayne held his gaze, then relaxed, leaning back again, calm restored. The host let out a brittle laugh. "Well, we'll be right back after this break." As the camera light dimmed, the crew swarmed onto the set like restless birds. Dwayne sat motionless amid the chaos, shoulders squared, eyes distant. He could feel the familiar knot of fatigue and resolve twisting in his chest. Inside, he thought, "They can question me, they can mock me, they can underestimate me, but I know who I am, and I will not break here, not now, not ever." The red light blinked on again. The interview was far from over. The heat from the studio lights had shifted from bearable to oppressive, their glare like molten stars focused solely on Dwayne's silhouette. The camera lenses, like hundreds of unblinking eyes, captured every breath, every twitch of a muscle, every micro-expression. The audience, arranged in perfect rows just beyond the shadows, sat suspended in a collective hush. The red light blinked steadily. Marcus Grayson adjusted. His tie. There was a sharpness in his movements now, a predator's readiness. The earlier jabs had been warm-up punches. Now he planned to deliver the knockout. Dwayne sensed it before it happened. He'd learned to read intention in posture, tone, even the flicker of an eyelid. His jaw clenched subtly as the memory of countless locker rooms, dusty wrestling gyms, and dim back alleys surged beneath his calm exterior. He sat motionless, waiting. Marcus gave the crowd a coy grin. "You know, Dwayne, you're an inspiring figure to so many people. You've got the muscles, you've got the box office numbers, you've even got the smile." He chuckled. The audience responded with polite laughter. Then the air shifted. "But let's be honest for a second," Marcus continued, voice silk wrapping around razor wire. "You've never exactly been known for your intellectual contributions." He paused dramatically. I mean, nobody's exactly quoting The Rock in a university lecture, are they? The laughter was louder this time, uneasy, breaking the fragile wall of respect between host and guest. Dwayne's expression didn't change. Not yet. Marcus leaned in, scenting weakness where there was only restraint. You've played to the lowest common denominator. Action movies, explosions, punching things. It's a good hustle, don't get me wrong. But did you ever stop to wonder if maybe, just maybe, you've been coasting on charisma and biceps? That beneath all this theater, there's not much depth. The words detonated in the space between them. The audience collectively inhaled. Somewhere in the back, a woman let out a soft, shocked, "Oh my God." Time fractured. The world slowed. Dwayne closed his eyes. The noise of the studio evaporated. In the darkness behind his eyelids, the images came. Uninvited, unrelenting. The tiny apartment in Hawaii where the rent notice hung like a threat on the peeling door. The echoes of his parents arguing over bills they couldn't pay. The rusted mattress on the cold concrete floor when he had no bed. The letter from the Calgary Stampeders cutting him from the roster. The phone calls unreturned. The doorways that never opened. The eyes that dismissed him before he even spoke. And then, his father, Rocky Johnson, towering, unyielding, weathered, by life's storms yet defiant against them. He heard his father's voice, deep and certain, as though the man stood beside him even now. "Conquer yourself, son. Not them. Never them. The world will throw everything at you to break you. Let it, just never break yourself." Dwayne inhaled slowly, feeling the breath steady his pulse, center his soul. His hands relaxed fractionally on the chair's armrests. The memory shifted to his teenage reflection in a cracked mirror. Young, angry, insecure. The same doubts that Marcus now voiced had once lived inside him too. Am I enough? Will I ever be enough? The answer had come only through time, through clawing his way back after every fall. His father had been right. The victory had never been about proving others wrong. It had been about proving himself. Right, the studio sound returned like a rising tide. The audience waited, frozen. Marcus leaned back smugly, believing the silence was surrender. Dwayne opened his eyes. They burned, not with rage, but with a molten calm that unsettled far more. He sat straighter, shoulders like immovable stone beneath the tailored fabric. Slowly, he turned his gaze to Marcus. The crowd sensed the shift, breath held, phones tilted up silently, recording. "No one ever handed me anything, Marcus," Dwayne said, voice low but carrying like rolling thunder. "Not money, not fame, not respect. I earned every ounce of it." Marcus chuckled weakly, attempting to reclaim control. "Well, sure, but..." Dwayne's voice cut through like a blade. "You can insult my career, my choices, my movies. I've heard worse. But what I won't let you do is stand there and disrespect the millions of people who fought like hell to climb out of nothing, just like I did. I represent them. That's the depth you don't see," the audience erupted. It wasn't applause, not yet. It was the primal sound of recognition, of validation. Dwayne continued, softer now. "I've stood at the edge with nothing. I've carried the weight of disappointment, failure, and doubt. And I stand here now not in spite of it, but because of it. You think muscles built this?" He tapped his chest once firmly. "This was built by every no, every loss, every broken moment I refused to let define me." Marcus blinked. His confident smirk faltered. Dwayne gave a small, genuine smile. Not for Marcus, but for the boy he once was. The boy who had finally answered his own question. "I am enough." The red light blinked on. The camera captured the stillness. The giant who had just absorbed the blow meant to topple him, and remained standing taller than ever. The audience rose slowly, clapping now, a wave building into a standing ovation. And for the first time, Marcus, Grayson had no words. The light seemed softer now, as if even they had bent in deference to what had just unfolded. The standing ovation tapered slowly, the energy lingering like an electric current suspended in the silent air. The audience stared, phones lowered. Even the cameras seemed reluctant to break the sacred moment. Marcus Grayson shifted in his chair, His bravado had evaporated, replaced by an uneasy tightness at the corners of his mouth. His script lay forgotten. On the glass table between them, its pages limp and useless, Dwayne Johnson sat there unmoving, the mountain that had weathered the storm. His deep brown eyes scanned the space, not with dominance but with unwavering serenity. His chest rose and fell once, a breath measured and intentional. He leaned forward, hands clasped lightly, and began. His voice was soft, carrying none of the anger many expected, but instead holding something far more disarming: grace. "When I was a kid," Dwayne said, eyes fixed ahead, "I used to think strength was about being the biggest guy in the room. The loudest, the toughest. I thought it was about forcing people to notice you, respect you, fear you." A hush fell so complete you could almost hear the whir of the studio lights overhead. I was wrong. The words settled like velvet-covered stones in the stillness. I've been broke, I've been hungry. I've stood in line at a convenience store with a single dollar in my hand, trying to figure out what would fill me up enough to get through the day. You learn fast that money and power can't buy respect, and it damn sure can't buy dignity. The audience sat frozen, caught in the quiet weight of his truth. Dwayne's voice remained low but radiated with inner strength. Over the years, I realized real strength, the kind that lasts, has nothing to do with crushing people. Nothing to do with towering over others or making them feel small so you can feel big. His gaze swept across the audience, gentle, yet penetrating. "Real strength," he said, pausing, "is the man who's been knocked down 10 times and still stands back up, ready to help the next person who falls. Real strength is kindness when cruelty is easier. It's respect when disrespect seems deserved. It's listening when everyone else just wants to talk over you." The words didn't just fill the studio. They filled the hearts of every person, sitting there sinking deep into places they hadn't realized were empty. I've seen people lose themselves in arrogance, in ego. I've watched it hollow them out from the inside, chasing approval, chasing attention, until there's nothing left but noise. You think that's power? That's not power. That's insecurity dressed up in expensive clothes. He leaned, back slightly now, shoulders relaxed, voice steady. "I'm not perfect. God knows I'm not perfect. I've failed more times than I can count. I've said the wrong things. I've made mistakes. But what I know, what I hold on to, is this. Every day you have a choice: tear someone down or lift them up. It's the simplest rule in the world, and it changes everything." The studio air thickened with emotion. Some audience members wiped at their eyes discreetly. Even Marcus shifted uncomfortably, his earlier bravado shrinking under the weight of dignity standing in front of him. I've been told I smile too much, that I shake too many hands, that I spend too much time with fans, that I take too many photos, sign too many autographs. But that's not weakness. That's not playing safe. That's understanding that no matter who you are, no matter how high you climb, you never forget where you came from, and you never forget the people who supported you on the way up. The moment grew heavier, not with tension, but with reverence. Dwayne's voice softened even more, like a father passing wisdom to a child. There's a Samoan proverb my grandfather used to say, "Ole ala ile pule ole tautua." It means, the way to leadership is through service. That's how I was raised. That's what my family taught me. You want to lead, you serve, you lift others up with you. His hands opened slightly, palms upward, as though offering the entire audience that legacy. I'm standing here today, not just because of what I've done, but because of the sacrifices of my parents, my grandparents, my ancestors who had, for less than I do now, but gave me everything they could. He paused, eyes closing briefly as emotion flickered across his face. When they reopened, they glistened faintly. I honor them by never using my strength to hurt, only to protect, only to build. The audience couldn't hold back anymore. A single clap broke the stillness, then another and another, until the entire room erupted in an overwhelming wave of standing applause. Not the forced, polite applause of showbiz tradition, but the raw, unfiltered gratitude of people witnessing something rare. Humility standing unshaken in the face of arrogance. Marcus Grayson sat back, silenced, his face blank, hands folded tightly in his lap. There were no clever comebacks, no snark. The master of spin had been spun still. Dwayne smiled warmly, softly, acknowledging the crowd with a humble nod. As the applause rolled on, he spoke his final words, barely above a whisper yet clear enough to reach every ear. Real strength is not in crushing others, but lifting them. The cameras captured that single sentence like a crown jewel. The ovation rose to deafening levels, and for the first time in the show's long history, the guest, not the host, had rewritten the ending. The sound was thunder. Applause roared through the studio, bouncing off steel girders and glass walls. It rolled in waves, relentless, alive. People stood shoulder to shoulder, faces lit with raw admiration. Some cheered with raised fists. Others simply stared, smiling through quiet tears. It was no longer a talk show. It was a moment suspended in cultural memory. The red light above the camera blinked silently. Somewhere deep inside the control booth, a producer whispered, "We've never had anything like this." Dwayne remained seated, grounded, hands resting calmly on his thighs as the ovation swirled around him like a rising tide. He breathed in the energy, not as validation, but as connection, a bond with the people who understood what he had said because they had lived it too. Marcus Grayson sat stiffly at first, the mask of the polished host cracking along invisible lines. His trademark grin had vanished. He stared across at Dwayne, caught between pride and shame. The silence between them was no longer hostile. It had softened into something else. Respect. Marcus cleared his throat, voice low and careful, almost inaudible beneath the crowd's thunder. I misjudged you," he murmured, leaning slightly forward. "That was, powerful." Dwayne gave a small nod, not smug, not dismissive, simply understanding. There was nothing to be gained in victory, only the lesson remained. The stage manager gave the cut signal. The cameras powered down. The heavy lights dimmed. The transformation backstage was immediate and electric. The same crew members who had avoided eye contact earlier now hovered with quiet reverence. A sound. Technician gently placed Dwayne's microphone on the chair instead of tossing it to the floor. The set designer, a grizzled man with inked forearms, nodded silently at Dwayne as he passed. As Dwayne made his way toward the exit, footsteps echoed through the cavernous backstage corridor. The same corridor that had once felt cold and indifferent now radiated warmth. Murmurs followed him, soft and grateful. "Respect, brother. Legendary, man. You spoke for all of us." Dwayne's heavy boots pressed against the polished concrete floor with calm certainty. He reached the backstage exit where the familiar young assistant waited, the one with trembling hands and nervous eyes who had first greeted him that morning. She stood now with her clipboard hugged tightly against her chest, her expression transformed. Wide eyes shimmered behind thin-rimmed glasses. "Mr. Johnson, Dwayne," she whispered, her voice trembling for an entirely different reason now. "I just wanted to say thank you. I'll never forget what you said out there." The vulnerability in her tone struck deeper than the cheers. Dwayne stopped. The hallway, buzzing with activity, seemed to narrow and quiet just for them. He crouched slightly so they stood eye to eye. "Listen to me," he said gently, his deep voice almost musical, full of warmth. "You don't owe me anything. You owe yourself everything. Never let anyone tell you what you're worth. They don't get to decide. You do. Always." Her eyes filled with tears. She tried and failed to blink away. Dwayne reached out, offering his familiar handshake, strong yet soft. She gripped it tightly, a silent pact formed in that single moment. As he stood and walked toward the loading dock, the door ahead swung open. The early evening sky stretched wide and gold, Los Angeles dust swirling like tiny embers in the fading light. The distant sound of traffic and sirens hummed softly against the breeze. Outside, a crowd had gathered. Word had spread. Dozens of people pressed against barriers, holding up phones and handwritten signs. The Rock. Respect. Thank you, Dwayne. Real strength. Dwayne paused briefly at the threshold. The moment wasn't about him. It never had been. It was about all of them. The people fighting their own invisible battles, carrying unseen scars, waking up every day and choosing to keep going. He stepped forward into the fading sun, not as a celebrity, not as a brand, not as a product, but as a man who had simply told the truth and reminded others of theirs. The door closed softly behind him. The redemption was complete. The city had exhaled. Downtown Los Angeles lay quiet under a velvet blanket of midnight blue. Streetlights flickered in solemn rows, their soft amber glow spilling onto cracked sidewalks and empty bus benches. A lone siren wailed faintly somewhere in the distance, dissolving into the vastness. Dwayne Johnson walked alone. His boots struck the pavement with steady rhythm. No entourage, no cameras, no crowd. Just him and the silent pulse of the night. His gray hoodie, pulled lightly over his head, caught the gentle breeze as it swept bits of litter and forgotten leaves across the asphalt. Each step echoed softly in the canyon of sleeping skyscrapers. The adrenaline had long since bled away, leaving behind something unexpected. Not triumph, not pride. Peace. The interview played back in fragments like ripples fading across still water. The questions, the insults, the applause, all distant now. Gone were the bright lights and the suffocating heat of the studio. In their place was clarity. Dwayne's deep voice filled the quiet, not aloud, but within. Legacy isn't built on applause. A soft exhale escaped his lips. He turned a corner, where an old street vendor's cart stood abandoned beneath flickering neon. It's built on the moments when you choose dignity over ego. When you stand tall not because you want to be seen, but because you know who you are when no one's watching. A lone newspaper skittered across the street at his feet. The headline was already irrelevant. Fame was fleeting, but character, that remained. Dwayne slowed his pace. He looked upward. The stars were faint through the haze, but they were there, as they had always been. Quiet, constant, unmoved by the noise below. A half smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Not everything needed to be conquered. Some things simply needed to be carried with strength, with patience, with grace. The sidewalk stretched ahead into soft darkness. He pulled his hoodie tighter against the cool breeze and kept walking forward, boots steady against the silence. No spotlight, no roar of approval, just purpose.